You should be, what does that say right there?
Recording has started.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks everyone for coming to the Clean Water Lecture today. I'm Jordan Geller from the Clean Water Initiative Program, and today we are joined by Danielle Owczarski from the Monitoring, Assessment, and Planning Program, and she's going to present on Vermont's river basin story maps and restoration, protection and restoration efforts to those, and also a new tool in the Clean Water portal. If people online are having any technical difficulties, if you can send an instant message through and I'll help you with that. For any questions, people online, you can send them through Skype. If questions are content related, if questions are content related, you can ask them during, but anything outside the scope of presentation, wait until the end of the presentation. There's a sign out sheet going around, if you guys can pass that around for people in person. And I am sending a SurveyMonkey link in the chat, and I'll send it out to everyone in person. If you guys can complete that after the lecture, that'd be great. And whenever you're ready.
Great. So as Jordan said, my name is Danielle Owczarski. I am a Vermont Basin Planner, and today I'd like to invite you to immerse yourself in Vermont's river basins through story maps and the Clean Water Portal. And I figured what better way to introduce you to story maps than through a story map. So welcome to the presentation about the new tools that Vermont Basin Planners are using to make implementing tactical basin plan priorities easier for planners and our partners. Presenting complex information to groups of people with differing levels of understanding can be challenging. And sometimes static presentation tools such as PowerPoint don't allow the level of flexibility that's required to get a point across. Static presentations can be difficult to view in isolation without a speaker to fill in the blanks. And we want our audience to be engaged. So I don't know if any of you have had this happen to you during a presentation, maybe that you're giving, or maybe you're the one falling asleep in the audience. But the goal is that we want people to stay awake and be engaged as we're giving our presentations. And I just want to make a note that this fellow fell asleep while our president was giving a presentation. So it happens to everybody. You don't have to feel too bad. So planners are required to convey summaries of long, complex documents to the public on a regular basis. And we needed a new way to do this that allowed us to interactively present our watershed goals and priorities to the public. And story maps provide us with a platform to do that. For those of you who are here today or on the call that don't know about tactical basin planning, I just wanted to give you a really quick review of what it is. So there are 15 planning basins in Vermont. Every 5 years, a new tactical basin plan is written for each of the 15 basins. A tactical basin plan provides an assessment of watershed health, and it defines ongoing and future strategies to address restoration and protection priorities. Much of the information we present is geographically explicit, and 8.5 by 11-inch maps and plans do not give readers the ability to explore the location of water quality priorities in detail. We are now using story maps to present our plan to the public and also as a way for folks to explore watershed information. To experience the interactivity of a story map, you can type your address into the search bar below, press enter, and click the location in the map to identify your watershed. So let's give it a try, see how it works. So I want to explore the map, so I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to type in the address of the office I used to work in Essex Junction. I think it'll pop up here. So I click on that. Zooms right into the location. If I want to figure out, well, what basin is this location in? I can click on that and I see it's located in Basin 8 in the Winooski River Basin. I can go back to the toolbar at the bottom. I can hit the home button. It brings me back to the full extent, and I'm able to see sort of in context where Basin 8 is located and where my particular location is. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of, during a presentation, the information you can convey, and then also how users can use it after you give a presentation. So we've developed a handful of tactical basin plan story maps for public use, and I'm going to go over 2 of them with you right now. And of course, if you want to explore these story maps later, you can either go to our website or you can go back to the story map, because I believe there'll be a link on CWIP's website, and you can explore the story maps through this presentation. So I'm going to click Explore down here in the lower corner and give you a summary of the White River Basin story map. So we start out letting people know what's the difference between a watershed or a basin. We're able to provide summary information and images. Then we want to give people context of the location that we're talking about, so we're able to provide a map, and then also some more context and then some information through icons. I'm able to also orient people to the plan, so if they're going to open the plan and look at it, what they can expect to find in the plan. And then I want people to maybe get a little bit of an introduction on how to use the maps, so making it really basic for them to find information, so they can click on this nice little blue line stream and see it's the White River main stem. Click in the basin and see that's the White River watershed. And then generally I give people instructions, just basic instructions to be able to use the maps. You can also put static maps in here as well. So you can use this similar to how you would use a PowerPoint, but what's nice is there's movement happening, and that can really make all the difference, I think, in engagement sometimes. You can also use images if you want to convey a particular message. And here's where I think it can get a little bit fun sometimes in presentations, especially if you have the extra time to interact with folks, is what you're looking at here is a map of protection priorities in the White River Basin. And you can link sort of this information. So what you're looking at here in these pink lines are 34 waters that were recommended for B1 fishing. And that just means these are recommended for further protection for the use for fishing. So you can click on these little lines and it tells you this is a B1 fishing candidate and it's part of the White River. If you click on this one, it tells you this is an outstanding resource water candidate and it's part of the White River main stem for recreational values. And this particular one is an abandoned water supply, and it tells you the class of the water supply, the name of it, and a description of it, and what its other uses are. So you can see that we could be in a meeting with folks, and maybe they want to know, hey, I live over in this particular area, can you zoom in and can we find out if there's any waters in my area? But sometimes we're not going to have the time during the meetings to do that. So what this allows folks is that when we put that link up online, they can go back to this and further explore these maps. So the second map is a very similar map, but it's focusing on the restoration or remediation priorities in the basin. So you can do the same thing. You can click on it and find out this is an impaired reach of the second branch, and it's impaired for E. coli. You can click on this one and find this is a stressed water. It's Ayers Brook, and it has elevated levels of chromium and nickel in the sediment. Then we just go back to some static information that folks can take more time to read as they're exploring this at home. And something else that we were able to do is take the priorities that we've identified in the plans and then organize them by town. So a lot of people that are using this information, they may be, town administrators or on planning commissions, or they're just a general landowner. So maybe they want to find out, hey, I live in Bethel and I want to know what are the priorities in Bethel. And so they're able to click in Bethel and they can read through the different priorities that we list in the plans. So all this information is also provided in the plan. This just gives you a better way geographically to locate the information, which works better for some people. And this map shows the project locations throughout the White River Basin, and you can do the same thing. You can click, let me go over here, you can click on these projects and get more information about them. So this is a dam removal that's been funded, and it gives a description of that removal. And then we provide a summary and the different tools that they can use. So that's the White River Basin Plan. And what's neat about these story maps is we do our best to try to make them relatively similar throughout the basins, but they also give the ability for the different planners to provide information in the way that works for them or works for the people that they're going to be providing the information for. And they may have different type of information that they need to present depending on what their priorities are. So I'm going to click Explore and go through some of the slides with you from the Winooski River Basin. So as you can see, the planner here started out by showing the projects in that basin. And then doing a similar thing where they're showing you here are the different planning basins and here's our process. And there's a lot of different maps in this particular one mixed in with images. And then the narrative that's supplied. And in these narratives, you can also include links that will open up in separate pages. You can also embed those links within the presentation itself. And one of the things that I really like about the story maps is that I find that the video functions work better, and I'm not really sure why they work better than PowerPoint, especially when you're giving the presentations, but they do. So for example, we have this really great video about addressing channel erosion and encroachment and flood resilience through river corridor management. And I would recommend, if you haven't seen this video, that you come back to this presentation and find it and watch it, because it's really great. And so that's the Winooski River Basin Plan. So there are a few more story maps that have been created for basin plans. We're doing them as we develop the plans. So some of the old plans don't have these story maps associated with them, but as new plans are developed, they'll put together these presentations. So I think what's important to understand is that story maps have multiple uses, and they come in a number of different formats that allow for flexibility in how information is presented. So right now I'm using a really particular, it's called the Cascade presentation type. But there's all different ways depending on what information you want to present. So we've developed story maps for other types of watershed information that we want to convey to the public. So for example, this is the Deer Brook Watershed Assessment. This was created to provide information back to a conservation commission and other people that were interested in the history of Deer Brook. It's an impaired watershed in the Lamoille River. And this one's a little bit different than what we've been looking at. So I'm going to click Explore. And so it's kind of similar where you can have links that open up imagery that you can look at. You can embed photos in the side and open those up as well. And then you can put in videos too. We're also trying to show an overall picture of this particular watershed. So we want to show our land use cover. And then we provide people information if they want to find out where that information came from. So the sources for this information. This is kind of my favorite part of it. You can use it during a presentation, or you can create these so that people can just use them when they're at home. But this really helps to give people context of locations So they can click on these different links. It shows them this is the Lamoille River Basin that you're reading about. And in the Lamoille River Basin, this is the Deer Brook watershed boundary. So contextually, you really know where things are. And then you can put in these other links that will zoom you into specific areas. So I think it's kind of neat that you're telling a story. It's kind of like a picture book where it's telling the story, and then you can visually see what the person is trying to explain and convey. In this particular site, we also have biological and chemical sampling history that we want to share with folks. So we're able to put in a little map showing the different sites that have been monitored. We can show a particular location, that we're talking about. We can show the monitoring information that we have at our sites, and then a link so that people can access further information. So I think this helps to show people where information can be accessed as well. And then the end of this particular story map has a list of recommendations. So this gives people sort of the action items that are needed in order to continue on the restoration in this watershed. So this really does help to convey information to all those partners that might be working on the watershed, or let's just say you live in the watershed and you're interested and you really don't know anything about this. This can provide a lot of information to somebody that they didn't know existed before. And I don't know if any of you have used, DEC's website, or I would say any government websites. When you're looking for information, it's not easy to find. We have so much information. And so to be able to make everything just easy to find is really difficult. And these story maps, if you have a particular audience that you're looking to talk to, provide you with the ability to say, put it all kind of in one place, all the links and everything that you want to convey, put it into a nice little package and give it to somebody so that they can learn a lot about something that they're interested in. So this story map is sort of like an instruction tool. So we created this for folks for a green stormwater infrastructure workshop on how to find and prepare watershed projects for implementation. So I'm going to open this one up. And so this one has a lot more sort of narrative, like interactive narrative, where the person reading it, it's like they're being talked to. And once again, we start with sort of an overall picture of, the area that we're focused on. And then just giving instructions, for somebody to use something. So in that previous slide, it showed you and provided links how to get to tactical basin plans. And now it's saying this is how you can search the plans for stormwater projects. Showing examples of stormwater master plans, and then how to actually find those master plans. Because we have a really great database with all this information on stormwater master plans, the stormwater mapping reports, and it's all kind of like, scattered throughout the website. And so in here, you can find that all in one place. And I actually use this a lot now when I'm looking for these projects myself. It also provides you the ability to sort of embed tools that are already existing in the presentation, which I think can be really great. So you don't have to click out and go to another page if you don't want to, if you want to put the information right into the tool. And I think it's important as well to be able to give some general instruction for the folks that are using this if they're not familiar with it. But there is some level, of expectation for people to be able to use technology at a basic level. And then if you want to, you can always add a map that people can sort of interact with that shows them, in this particular case, where stormwater projects are and the type of stormwater projects are and how they're distributed throughout the state. So I was able to present this to the group, and then later on they can go back and they can access any of the information that I presented. I find that a lot of times people will say, oh, can you make that PowerPoint available online? And then you go to the PowerPoint and it's like you need somebody there to give you the details because everything is really written. PowerPoint shouldn't have a lot of narrative in them. And so I think this provides you the ability to have the narrative without it being too boring, kind of to look at and not just be looking at a bunch of words. So we're also committed to making actions for implementing the strategies that we identify in our plans explicit. A second way we are accomplishing this goal is through the development of the Clean Water Portal. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this tool, but it's a really great tool that's been in development. I think maybe like a year or two old, possibly. So the Clean Water Portal provides myriad ways to interact with projects identified to accomplish the strategies that we list in our tactical basin plans. Because we have a lot of partners that we're working with. You know, it's not like we put a plan out and we say, this is all the stuff that needs to be done, and then we just expect people are going to be able to figure it out. What we say is that here are the things that need to be done, and we're going to show you where it needs to happen, and work with partners to be able to put that information on maps and then be able to sort of communicate with them on what's been completed, what still needs to be done, where we might need more information. So the Clean Water Portal houses the Interagency Clean Water Projects Dashboard, also the Watershed Project Database Search, the Water Quality Project Screening Tool, which is a new tool that I'll show you today, and the Stormwater Practice Calculator, Stormwater Treatment Practice Calculator. So this is what the Clean Water Portal looks like. So let's explore it a little bit. So first is the Interagency Clean Water Projects Dashboard. This dashboard shows you the projects that have been completed or funded through the state. So this is what you're going to see when you click on it, and then you have an option to search for whatever you're interested in. So, you know, I'm a basin planner in the Lamoille River, and let's say I have to generate a report, and I want to know in the Lamoille River how many stormwater projects have we completed. So I can search that, and I get a list here. So, I mean, I think I'm doing pretty good, right? I mean, that's a lot of projects, right? So what I can do with this information is I can view it. So let's see, this is a good project. I like this one. So let's look at it. It's located in Hyde Park, Vermont, in the Lamoille River Basin. So this is kind of neat. So these are projects, like I said, that's been funded or completed. So they might be funded but are still ongoing. You can see the location of the project. You can find out how much it cost, where that funding came from, a description of the project. You can see the before and after pictures. So this is a stormwater project. There was a small stream that was receiving a lot of stormwater from the village, and that stream was just getting eroded from all the water that was coming down. So they realized they needed to stabilize that stream and do some green stormwater infrastructure. So this tells you the results of the projects, how many acres of impervious it treated, what was completed, and then the reduction of phosphorus from the project. So another way that you can look at the projects as well is by clicking on the map. And so you can see all the projects in the Lamoille that were completed. You click on the button and it tells you the name of the project, the type of project, the program that funded it, how much it was, and then the year that it was funded, and if it's ongoing or complete. So you could go through here and you could pick out, you know, you can clear this, and you could pick out every project in the state if that's what you're interested in and pull all those projects up. It might take a minute to do your search, but you can find that information. So I'm going to go back to home and show you the Clean Water Project database. So this has all the clean water projects in it. So it's not necessarily just things that have been funded or completed, but it's also projects that we'd like to see be completed. So our partners use this a lot when they're looking for, either they're looking for projects because they want to know what needs to be done. And, you know, I want to apply for ERP funding this round. So they can use the Watershed Projects database search for that. They can also go and say, you know, I've identified a project that's a really good project. I want to see, is it already in the database? And they can look. If it's not, they contact the planner, and then we develop a plan for it, and we can put it into the Watershed Projects database. So it's the same type of thing where you can pick, you know, your project type. So we can do, let's do river corridor easement design. And let's look in Basin 7, because that's my basin. And I can see all the different projects. I can look at the status, and then I can organize the status by exporting. So there's this button to report. You can export it. It exports it to an Excel spreadsheet, and you can look at the project description. You can sort it. You can kind of mess around with the list if you want. But right now, we don't have a way, like in the interagency dashboard, to be able to map these projects. So it's a little bit difficult. Like if you were, a town manager and you want to know the projects that were in your town, you might rather have a map to get an idea of where they're located than just have a list to look at. So that's something that we're working on. There's also the stormwater treatment practice calculator, where you can put in to find out your loading information. So if you are located in the Lake Champlain Basin, this is something that's probably going to be of interest to you, because the EPA has required us to reduce phosphorus going into the lake, and so you want to know, well, how much phosphorus is my project going to reduce? And this is an estimate. So you can put in your loading information, that includes your drainage area, your impervious area, and your pervious area. You put in your stormwater treatment practice type, and if it has a storage volume, and then you can compute and get your phosphorus reduction value. So that's another tool. And then one of our newest tools is the water quality project screening tool. So we created this for our partners when they are working on projects. There's always the case that because all our projects are located very close to rivers, wetlands, lakes, that there may be conflict with natural resources, especially with, it could be a restoration project, it could be stormwater treatment. So there's a lot of different things that can trigger possible review from our regulatory folks. And so we wanted to make it easy for our partners to be able to know who those contacts are. So they don't have to go to our website and search all the different programs and try to find that information. So this is kind of like our phase 1 part of this project screening tool that provides basic information. So there's a couple different ways you can use it. You can put in your project address and just do find address. You can zoom in to a location and click on it. So that's a good spot right there. You can also enter the coordinates if you have them. And another way that you may have seen, or you will see if you use the Watershed Projects database, is there's actually a project screening tool that you can click on that will send you to this information as well for the project. So you don't necessarily have to know the location if you have the project in the database. So we're going to submit this. And it's going to give us back this cool little project screening report. So what you're going to get out of this is your lat and long coordinates. You're going to get your town, your county, which hopefully you know, what planning basin you're in, and then the sub-basin information, which is important if you're going to be submitting this particular project to the Watershed Projects database. It's also going to give you your non-regulatory contact info, so your tactical basin planner, your river scientist, and any regulatory contact info for the floodplain manager, the streamwell engineer, your stormwater analyst, the Act 250 coordinator, your wetland ecologist, and your lake shoreline scientist. So it's really easy access to find those folks' contact information and get in touch with them. Stop exploring here. So an additional tool we're working on, as I alluded to before, is the Watershed Projects Explorer. This tool will be combined with the Watershed Project Database Search that we just looked at, and it'll have functions similar to the Interagency Clean Water Projects Dashboard. So while the Interagency Clean Water Projects Dashboard displays information about projects that have been funded or completed, the Watershed Projects Explorer will display projects for development and implementation. So we hope to continually improve our tools. So you're going to want to contact, and if you click on this link, it'll give you all our contacts, a local basin planner with feedback. So if you use these tools, something happens, there's an error, it's not working for you, you have suggestions that you think may work really well for the tool, we're definitely open to feedback. We want to make these tools work for our partners, for people who are using them. So definitely contact us. And I just want to end, before we open it up to questions, just by saying thank you. And I want to make sure that you're enjoying Vermont's river basins not only through these narrative story maps, but also by getting outside.
Thank you, Danielle. Can open it up to questions now. Anyone online or in person?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How much work is it to put one together?
I think the most work is putting together your first one because you're really learning how to use the tool. The story map tool itself, if you go into the program, they have really good tutorials on how to use them. This one in particular, I developed in about 7 hours, I would say. And I'm a little bit like very detail oriented, so mine might take a little longer maybe than somebody else's. Yeah.
Someone's typing a question online. Also, while we wait, if we could pass around the sign-in sheet, just make sure everyone puts their name down. And I will be sending out a link to SurveyMonkey. I also put it in the chat for people online. Okay, question from Pam. Can you see this as something that we could develop on a regional basis and not just Watershed?
I guess I would need to know more about what I think you could use it for anything, really, you know, if you want to present geographically explicit information or you're just looking for a tool to use. I don't think it matters. I think that the planners themselves are going to be focusing on watersheds as they develop these tools because that is really what our focus is. But I could see us working with regional partners to provide, help to provide them the information that they need to develop like a more regionally focused plan.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Is this a commercial software application or something that put together?
It's Esri online, yeah. And we have an account. The state has an account.
What watersheds or libraries can you provide?
So I think Passumpsic has one, Winooski has one, Otter Creek has one, the White River has one, and I think Marie is looking at the Deerfield right now.
Danielle, can you track how many people have viewed them online? Are there analytics associated with that?
Yeah, so I haven't really explored it too much. There's really basic analytics that just say how many views you've gotten. Mm-hmm. It does count, like, I think anyways, it's counting. Yeah, I think it's counting like when I'm using it, mm-hmm. but when I'm opening up the link, not when I'm like just editing it through the program. So yeah, we can track it, but I haven't looked into it further to see if we can suss things out from those numbers. We just really have the total numbers of views. The other thing you can do is as you're developing it, it's private. We have the option at ANR to just share within our organization, and then you can share with everyone. You don't have the option like some other applications where you can just pick the people who can view it, so that's not an option right now.
A follow-up from Pam. She said she was thinking of a story map for CDRPC that can show projects for in their towns. She wants to chat after, so is your contact information on the presentation?
Yeah, I think if it's the Pam I'm thinking of, she knows how to find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's me, Danielle. Just something I was just thinking that it would be really neat to have, and I can create one myself, a regional map. But that, for this, like for the town of Orange, we have 3 watersheds there. So mm-hmm. I don't want that town to have to go to 3 different story maps. I'm just thinking that our town lines don't always follow the watershed lines. I realize that, but I'm just thinking more, comprehensive for a particular municipality. But, I'm not asking the state to create that. I'm just more thinking of creating it myself, and then maybe with your assistance and getting the necessary data to go into it.
Yeah, that would be great.
And trying to figure out funding to do that too. Thanks.
So Danielle, I noticed that the story maps are sort of templated in terms of their flow, and then each watershed has watershed-specific information in them. So I am curious if you might see expanding using this technology to actually be the basin plan, as opposed to have a written document, to have all that information sort of electronically linked and laced together through something like this, and just have that actually be the document.
Yeah, I think that you could do that. I think we'd have to explore, because some people want a written document, so we'd have to explore like how that would work. Can you create a written document from the story map so that we're not having to create sort of two documents in that way? I definitely see the possibility to do it. I haven't used it enough in that way. We do use a lot of tables, but I feel like you can put those static images on there. So I think it's possible. I think it would be interesting to try it out with like a smaller document and see how it worked.
Just sort of seeing like that vision of the fully electronic, fully database created tactical basin plan that's a product of the assessment stuff and the watershed projects database, all put together in one.
Yeah, I mean, what
What
I've noticed, and I don't know if they're using story maps or not, but I've seen articles in like the New York Times and other organizations who are using a very similar technology, and they're amazing. Like the stories are amazing. They're just so much more interactive. I really enjoy reading them, and I don't know if they're using like a different type of program that has very similar things, but I mean, I think it's something that would be really cool to try out and see. Yeah.
Any more questions?
I'm sorry, I'm just like some person just blew in. I'm a civilian here, but
I'm a civilian.
I like water. So what, like the building? I mean, you're basically responding to the prompts from this proprietary portal?
Yes.
And entering data. It's not like it articulates. Does it articulate with GIS or with existing databases?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, so we house we are kind of moving towards this way to house all our geographic information, all the GIS stuff online, like through servers. And so Esri Online houses a lot of that information. And so we can basically create web maps through this application and then use those web maps in the story maps. We can export layers, data layers, make specific data layers through GIS using ArcMap Online, and then just immediately transfer it right to the story maps. ArcGIS, I'm sure ArcGIS Online is not cheap. But if it's something that where you work or whatever already has that option. I haven't used this, like you're saying, as a civilian without having access to an account, so I don't really know how it works that way. But there are there's a lot of opportunity to be able to work on things. And then this program, the story maps themselves are very intuitive. So you don't have to be a programmer or a coder to be able to do it. If you have that ability, you can probably do more with it. But it's pretty easy to use. I think they make it so that anybody can use it.
I'm sorry. Are there like trade journals that is this certain fields that this is, or is it just like a product?
It's like a product. So what's kind of cool is that if you go to Esri Online, you just look up story maps, search them. You can go through and look at all the examples of story maps that have been created. And so when I go to natural sciences or whatever, there's not as many as there might be in, transportation or business and economics or something. So I think everybody's using them, especially like I was saying, where you have like geographically explicit information. It could be like an economic thing based on like housing and development or something like that. So there's all different ways that you can present the information. This is just really specific to watershed stuff, but you can do anything.
All right, well, thank you, Danielle. If anyone has any additional questions, you can email her, or we have a little time after. The recording will be online along with the presentation. And thank you. Next month's lecture on April 11th is Whisper. It's louder than it sounds. Millions available for natural resources restoration. It's on the Water Infrastructure Sponsorship Program. Sorry. Yeah. Hope to see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
We stop recording.
Yes, you stopped. It stopped. Okay, now share.
Did it stop? Does it stop?